says it's just not holding the blade. Not holding the butt. What's going on there? Well folks, welcome back to the workshop. Today we're starting off with a wee different one. A wee green DIY Bosch cordless sander. Delta sander. It's a wee 18 bolt one. A PSM 18LI. Now the problem with it is it ain't running. It seems to be trying. Just doing nothing. First thing is the battery. Make sure that's not the problem. 19.3 volts. Nothing wrong with that. So, problem's the tool, not the battery. So hopefully this will be a nice wee simple fix. Hopefully it'll be something like a bearing inside, just stopping the motor from turning, because otherwise I don't think there'll be much worth in fixing this. It's only a wee cheap DIY Bosch. It's not a blue Bosch professional one. These won't be overly expensive. Dear to replace with the battery, but for a body only, wouldn't be all that much. We'll see if we can get in there and fix her up, or at least see what the problem is. So she's a wee Delta or mouse sander. Generally, I think the base comes off of this. Yeah, we'll check it out in the breakdown here first. Now, might only be a wee cheap DIY one, but you still get the breakdown for it on the Bosch website. So we're going to hope it's this bearing. It looks like not this entire base that comes off, it's actually just a wee front piece here. We take that off to get to the screws underneath. So that's our main hope. We'll see if that's a standard bearing, because this bearing here is actually part of all of this, the whole motor. So to replace the bearing on the motor, you're onto nearly £33. It's either going to be that or the switch, which is another £33. So for the electronics, the motor, if the motor ever stops, there's only really two components: switch and the motor assembly. Hopefully it's this bearing. We can just change that on its own if it's that. But everything else you can buy as well. The base, in case the velcros ever go, sometimes these here bases can strip out as well. Clamshell, DOS ports, battery charger. Everything else still available, but these two parts ain't cheap. So it's this that comes off. That on its own. Two screws here, two screws there. These aren't the kind of tool you'll be getting in all that often. Take that off. And look at that. That is our problem. We can test it by switching it on. Just bearing in mind, this will probably be imbalanced now with this here removed, so don't be running it too long. So it does run. So all we need to do is remove this. And I don't think, nah, I'll get the pullers on there. I'm going to have to strip her. Little O-ring here on the dust port. Need to just squeeze that out as well. anything much in her when you actually open it up. So your switch assembly, your board, which is just an open green board, but then it's only a DIY machine. Wee contacts onto wee wiring loom, and that's it. Pull that off. The other bearing's actually alright. It's just this one. So give us a wee blowout with the compressor, get rid of all this, by the looks of it, drywall dust. This thing clearly hasn't been sanded much timber. Clean that down and we'll change this bearing. This thing, I would say, it's not been using timber, more for home decor by the looks of it. I would say that there's paint on there now. Something has to get on and melt it onto there now. Like that. It's also rubbing on the fan. Not been used for the right thing, that I would do it. Maybe somebody was sanding a wall or sanding off paint. That'll do it. Small bursts, but get an air compressor and clean it out every once in a while. That'll keep it going right. Otherwise she just builds up here and fouls up the fan. But other than that, it's not too bad. Right, that'll do. All I need to do now is get this bearing off. We'll just replace this one and probably leave this one, so that's not too bad. Now that is actually a 608 JESA bearing. 608 FAG will have to do. Now the other one, which I'm not going to change, would actually be quite difficult to change anyway, because this here fan is not pressed onto the shaft. So that is actually a pin going through the armature onto the motor spindle. As you can see if you look at the end of the motor, it's a very small little spindle, same as down here. This is actually an insert, so that there's a spindle and the fan pressed onto it, the bearing pressed onto the spindle, and all that there is actually pressed onto the motor. So to take that off, to pull off this here spindle, and that'll be difficult to do without destroying the DC motor. So more than likely whenever this one goes, you might be buying a new motor anyway. So it's just as well we're only needing to replace this one. Press that on. Now obviously we can't stick us on a steel plate to press it on. We have to actually support the shaft to press this on, because otherwise you'll be pressing the spindle and the shaft and probably squeezing the two together even more, jamming up the motor. So you need to actually just support the spindle and press on the bearing. Shouldn't need that much force anyway to put this on. That's it. You could probably just get away with tapping that on if you really wanted to. Really not much holding it. There we go. Ready to go. Now the red lead will be marked somewhere on the DC motor. Just put the red lead back onto that. It's not going to matter all that much. It's just better to do it right. That's it. Little switch lever just sits down there. It's rotating up and down, but it is just a rocker switch or a slide switch. So if ever doesn't switch on, it could just be dirt and dust inside that switch as well. So if this doesn't switch on or the switch doesn't work, get a bit of contact cleaner in there. That one's in here, that was actually holds the base on. The one's part of the dust port, stuck on this side. They just drop in. That's the clamshell that actually holds on place. And this drops back in, making sure your bearing is in as well, and the two white holders. Always put on a sanding pad as well whenever you go to test these. Do not want to fix them, then destroy the velcro on the customer. Last thing, just this little rubber for the dust port. That should be her. That's it. Simple as that. Change a bad bearing on a seized Bosch sander. We 18 volt green Bosch PSM 18 Li. If you have one and you won't run, check that bearing before you go throwing it out. Could be a very cheap fix. 608 bearing is only going to cost something like €6. Well worth changing if it ever stops working. It's only a 2020 machine as well, so not a terrible amount of work done. That's her, ready for more work. Now, next up, the Makita Jigsaw. Those are the 4350 FCT from 2007. My problem with her is she's not holding the blade, supposedly. Runs fine. Like I said, it's just not. Says it's just not holding the blade. It seems to be holding the blade. A little bit. Alright, there we go. So you can see these two openings here and here. That's for letting in the blade in and out. So whenever you put it back with this lever, it can slide in. Whenever you let go, then it closes over and locks it in. But as you can see in this one, this blade's actually got tore out of it before. There's an extra two slots up here now. So under load, that blade will actually come out. It doesn't look bad and it sort of holds, but if you put any tension on it when cutting, that'll probably pull straight out. Right, so we'll have to replace the holder or replace that sleeve. And either way, you have to dismantle the whole thing, change either one. Now, it's a lot cheaper just to replace the sleeve, but it's not easy to do. You have to strip this whole assembly apart and take out the wee pins and lock and spring and everything inside. This wee rubber seal, and there's a circlip at the back of here. Bit of a pain, to be honest with you. It's a lot easier just to replace it, just as one assembly. Into here, and also just give this a wee blow out with a compressor. Watch that wire. Clean all this down first. We're not worried about the aesthetics, but you don't want the dust getting into the gearbox whenever you open this. Take that out. Now even this has a little bit of work to it. To take this out, you have to get a pin from here. To remove the pin, you first have to remove a circlip. So get the open end facing up and push it down into the machine. Pop that out. Then the pin is free to come out to as far as there. But that ain't enough to take this here blade holder out. So you also have to take out these two plates. Four screws hold these on. Those out, you can now lift the plates out. Take them out, try to keep them clean. Now you have the clearance to take that pin out. Now you can take the tool holder out. Now the hole in it faces into the back of the machine because you have to put this on the right way so it grabs this arm in the correct manner. Now the only problem with replacing the whole thing in one go is the cost. It's not cheap. That probably costs about 60 or 70 euro for that assembly. It does work at a better price just to replace the part. But even this cost about 20 euro. So you can buy as a whole assembly or the individual pieces. This time we're going to have a wee go at just fixing the part itself. Something to keep the cost down. So just a wee rubber cover. Pull that off. Then you've got an internal circlip onto that. These can be a bit of a torture to get out because they're a very fine circlip, and even most circlip pliers are too small to actually get them, or they're too small for circlip pliers. Now that out. The sleeve should come off. That off. Keep your spring in that hole. Now, I'll not lie, refitting this can sometimes just be down to luck. It's not easy to do. You'd assume you're sticking in that spring first and twisting it back, but that won't work. Sometimes it does, but generally it won't. You want this pin, the actual lock pin, over here first, where it's actually in position. Just put that on. Your spring in the wrong location. Then put in your spring. Then twist it and push it on. Seems easier there when I'm doing it, but when you try that first, it rarely goes smoothly. There we go. One tool holder. A lot cheaper than replacing the whole thing, but replacing the whole thing is a lot easier. Either way, you have to take the entire thing out. There's what's actually wrong with the old one. You can see where the blade bust out. So any sort of tension, it's just going to pull out again. So this is your metal sleeve that actually does the locking. So to refit, also just check this little leaf spring. It can sometimes break as well. Half fit your steel plates again. Just have them sitting up. Also put the little rubber back over your tool holder. Just to keep the dust out. Doesn't last too long without that rubber cover. Doesn't actually clip on here, it's actually clipping in on the ring on the shaft here, so you have to get that tucked in. That's where the lip is. So, slide that on. No real reason to clean this out, so it's still very greasy. Another thing is find a C-clip or E-clip. That's it there. Get that out. Put this in. refit your plates. You have to go into this here guide first, actual slider. Fit them. Lift up your leaf spring. Tuck them underneath. Then you can push them down and refit everything. That's that. Lastly, it's the clip. That's it. A bit of grease, not much. And that'll do. And just refit with the actual guide roller into the actual lifter, the lifter guide. You know you're done when the blade doesn't go up or down. Now that is actually a new one for me. Never seen somebody busting a blade out of one of them. Normally they're just seized up totally or rusted up. Now you just need to get everything back into place. Little nut to hold on your base drops on there. Your base then screws onto it. That should be her. Retest. That's her. One Makita 4350 FCT with a new blade holder. That's the number there if you ever need it, that part on its own. Tricky enough to do, but if you take your time, it is possible. And it's a lot cheaper than replacing the whole thing. That's her. Now, a Dewalt impactor. Might be a quick repair. Yep. Just the butt holder. Not holding the butt. Must be a quick wee one. We've seen plenty of these being repaired too. But sure, one more wouldn't hurt. It's a very common repair. Anybody that has a Dewalt impact driver will eventually probably have to get this done. Replace the ball spring inside the chuck. First off, you have to get behind this little spring. It's easier said than done. Prise that up. Walk it around. The spring, washer, spring again. Take that off, we sleeve. You find your broken spring in behind. And also a little tiny steel ball. Make sure the rest of the spring isn't inside this holder. Well, you need to fix it. There's one of these. Another one of the little springs. They just eventually break and need to be replaced. Little leg on them here, little foot. It eventually breaks off. When that's gone, no longer holds up the ball, so it won't lock on the butt. Not expensive, well, like €2.50. And that's the part number there. If you ever need to order one, plenty available online. Throw that over the top, lift up the little leg and drop it into that hole right in there. Push it down, put the wee ball on top, and that's you. Just reassemble it. Big spring, flat washer, and your spring clip to hold it all down. It's the tricky bit, just getting it back on again. Get one little end of that spring in, and just walk the rest around. That's it. Simple as that. Very cheap and easy fix for a Dewalt impact driver. That's it. Right. Next up is a charger. A Makita double charger. What's this? The DC18RD. Generally, there's not much you can do with these. Normally one side goes, but actually both of these are working. No, there's the problem there. This side's working, this side's not. This is working. This side's not. It's not even going on. It's actually these little yellow contacts here. This one is all mangled up. So maybe we might be able to do a wee repair job on this. If you scrap ones, you might be able to do something. They don't even have to be scrap double chargers. You can sometimes get away with standard single chargers. Let's say somebody was on this before. There's only one rubber foot on it, the rest are all missing. Pull off the top, And all you have is 2 single chargers powered by a single power supply. That's it. Right, bit of gunk inside of here as well. Need a wee clean out. So this is the damaged one. Luckily for this, it's all modular. So you can actually just take off that wee charging port. So with that, a lot of actual things inside this is actually separate. It's not just one big board. 2 separate board, 2 separate charging ports, cradles here, separate fans. All these here things can easily be disconnected and taken out. Chargers in general, when they go wrong, you bin them, you buy a new one. There's nothing available for inside of chargers. Makita though, you can actually buy the bits inside. This here, you can buy the chargers, you can buy these here, the fans, the holders, even these little doors up here, even down to little LED lenses that go on here. You can buy all the different pieces, even the springs. We're actually returning this. Everything is modular and all the parts are available. Now, that's not to say that it's actually worth buying the parts. One of these here boards, if one of these here go, could be costing you about 100 or 150 euro for one of them there boards. That kind of money, it doesn't really make any sense. You can buy the entire charger for that kind of money. You can buy these and 240 and 110 volt. So you can buy these here separately and different voltages as well, but at 150 euro for that board, it's just not worth it. The wee USB board, still about 40 quid for that, but if that failed you wouldn't really need to replace it. The power filter, this here one, another 50, might be worth changing that. And these here, if they break, might be worth changing one of them, but even still, that costs about 50 euro for that there from Makita. Be expensive to actually fix it. Would be much more beneficial is to just get yourself a broken charger. So this is one the board is actually failed on. Now the actual chargers themselves, the actual boards, they are different. Not all that dissimilar, but the orientation's wrong. This one's actually bigger than this one. So the actual charger is not actually going to fit into this, I wouldn't imagine, so anyway. Yeah, this fan's in the wrong location, so you couldn't use this board on one of these, because sometimes you can actually pick these up for dirt cheap. But if you need to, you could rub the parts out of this for one of these. Use that instead of this. We might need to modify the leads to make it long enough. But even these here chargers, you can actually buy the parts for these as well, not just the big double ones, which is good off Makita, but overpriced for the board. But when you need everything else, it's handy to be able to buy the parts instead of always replacing them, buying new chargers all the time. And as well, the 2 main things that actually blow on any charger, one being the fuse here. I should be on the main board here, and the varistor, these boys here. The 2 main things that actually pop. So whenever your charger stops working, always check them first. But Makita actually sell these separately as well. So if your varistor pops, you can just buy it from Makita for a few euro and change it out. Same as the fuse, but you can use any fuse for that there. So we'll see if we can get this to fit in. The leads are shorter. The leads were tracked around here, but only get up to this point. So we might get away with just moving the leads, have them run down here instead. If not, we can modify them. Yeah, just not long enough. We'll get away with this here multi-lead. We'll get away with this connector. But not with the power leads. So we'll have to change them over. Now, I have just went with soldering the wires together because taking these wires off is going to be too rusty. Now this one, where I took the lead off, the lead was just put straight on and soldered on. So it was actually quite easy to unsolder. With too much heat onto these pans are just held in by the plastic. If too much heat goes on, the plastic melts, the pan just becomes loose. It'll be no good then. You can't use it on the charger. This one, what I'm going to use, the lead is actually wrapped around. So it's going through that hole and actually wrapped the whole way around. So you have to put a lot of heat into that to get it off this here pan. And if you do, you're just going to melt this pan. So don't bother. If it's like this here, cut it and solder it on, put a bit of heat shrink on it. That'll do just as good a job. Just to show that it does happen. This was the first one I had. And that's exactly what happened. Got a little bit of heat onto it. Because she's wrapped around so much, you have to keep the heat on. And then it eventually melted this here pan. You can see the plastics come loose. So that is no longer solid enough. Plus she's actually sitting to one side now. So that's no good. So for changing them, just cut the wires and solder them on. It's far safer. So that is sitting there. It doesn't matter which charger you get. These here are basically all the same because they're going into the same battery. With that on there. So I'm putting this lead down this side along with the fan. And I'm taking this one into the original track. When you are cutting them leads and soldering them on, it's always good to leave them a little bit longer. Because you don't know where that solder joint is going to be. If it's on the corner, you're going to have to move it either way. And you're going to run out of length. That's it. One retainer replaced. That didn't cost €50. Now we should have one charger, both chargers working. Nice one. Fits in perfectly. Both fans are running. That is a lot cheaper than actually buying that little part. At €50 for that, that's a wee bit of a rip-off, to be honest. But at least you can buy the parts for these chargers. And if you have a scrapped single port charger, keep it just in case you need any of the parts. Most of them are compatible, apart from maybe the board itself. That's her, one Makita DC18RD charger, fixed up again. Next up, we're on to another Makita. This time another Makita nut gun. This is the DTW1002, I think it is. Half-inch nut gun. lights. But it's not doing anything. What is she? 2017. See if this one can be fixed. This is either going to be a bad switch or a controller. It's not looking healthy anyway. Plenty of rust. That bearing's not great, but stuff. Yeah, controller's gone. Don't even need to get the thermal imaging camera on that. Can feel it with my fingers. Big hot spot down here. I'll get the camera just to look at it anyway. Yeah, you can see it there already. It's going to pull the trigger. Yeah, down on there. It's hotter than my finger. So that's gone. That's definitely gone there. Heard a little sizzle there as well. Yeah, probably just that board. Actually, it does that. It's raised up back here as well. In other words, that she's gone. So that is going to cost around €300 for that part. Just not worth it. You buy the machine for nearly that kind of money. But it's not to say it hasn't done any work. But honestly, when it comes to brushless machines, that's the danger. The controller goes, generally, it would cost more to fix it than it would to replace it. Not always the case, but it does a lot of the time. Right, so that one, not worth fixing. Sticking with the nut guns, move on to a Milwaukee. She's not running. There's something wrong with that battery. Yeah, so hang it on there now. It's all dented up. Don't know what that's about. But she's not running anyway. It might be something to do with it. It's very stiff. That's not right anyway. They're the wrong screws. So in other words, where did they put the right ones? There. One there. One there. Right, put the wrong screws in the wrong place. See what I mean? That's wrong. That one's right. That's wrong. And that's wrong. Oh, she's tight. The bearings aren't gone. Is that just jammed up or something? A little stuff, but not too bad. Unless they opened this for a different reason. Just didn't put it back together correctly or something. Nah, it is turning. So this is looking like a motor problem. Have a quick look, but I would say this won't be worth fixing either. Right, wires are nipped, but they haven't actually cut them. So it's not a wiring problem. I would say that's just going to be a motor problem. Right, in other words, that ain't worth fixing. It's going to be a problem either with the stator, the switch, the wee controller, or the buttons down here. Either way, it's all one piece. It costs nearly as much as the machine to replace. That ain't going to be worth fixing. But I got a wee bit of use out of that one. She's a 2019 machine. So that, just like the Makita, it's not worth fixing. Next up, we have a Bosch drill, GSB 18 V/LI. It's an older version actually. Same one as my own. Same drill, it's the old brush version. This one hasn't done very much at all. She's 2016, but she looks like she's barely been used. Question is, what's wrong with it? It's not good for a start. Not even a light. Right. Open this and see what we can do. Generally, if the light's not coming on, that's either going to be a controller or a broken wire. Let's hope a broken wire, because the controller might not be worth fixing. It's done absolutely nothing. Brushes are still basically brand new. It's not a broken wire. And even if it was the switch, it's still part of the controller. This whole assembly is one piece. Nothing. What do we do here? Right, price this first. Right, new parts are all obviously available, but this control module, electronic module, is costing about €80 for me to buy and put on. It would kind of be worth doing that, to be honest. It's not old and it hasn't done much work, so changing this here would be reasonable. Still going to be cheaper than buying a new one. Plus the motor's still perfect, there's nothing wrong with that at all, apart from just a little bit of dust. I would say this thing's just been lying up for a couple of years in a shed or something, and water's actually got onto the switch of the controller and shorted it out. But I'm not sure if the customer's going to want to spend that kind of money on it, so thought maybe I would have one of these in stock and just do it for cheap to get rid of it, but I don't have any in stock. Another thing I do have is another scrap drill. This is another old version, but with a bad motor. So the motor's gone in this. The switch and electronic unit should be okay, but it is a different type number. Same model number, just a different type one. So this one's actually a drill driver. This one's actually a hammer drill. It should be the same switch, so if it is, we'll just swap these around and just use the second hand part to get this going for nice and cheap. Hope this actually still works as well. The motor's definitely going, but I guarantee to say the switch isn't faulty also. Take that out. So that's useless, but maybe the gearbox as well could come in handy for somebody, so I'll just hold on to that. Also the brush ring, save that, because these machines, these Bosch ones, they were a brushed machine and they had a brush ring just like the Dewalt, but they actually weren't sold separately. So if you wanted the brushes for this or the brush ring, whenever these brushes wore out, you had to buy the whole motor assembly. just to change them, which was never worth it. So if you ever have one of these Bosch drills and your brushes have worn out, just actually snip off the leads, pull out the brushes, and actually fit a set of Makita brushes, CB44s. They're the ones for the Makita cordless drills. They'll also fit onto this here. Snip that lead, take out the brush, put in the Makita brush, and the Makita brush actually just clips on, and just clip it onto the top of the brush holder. Do the same job. So that can be got rid of. This, just give a quick wee clean before we fit it on here. Motor in this has done absolutely nothing. Not even a mark on the inside of the field. Must be water damage or something, or moisture ingressed on that controller. Oh well. Keep the brush holder with the fresh brushes. Don't reverse polarity as well, because you reverse the direction of your switch. Red side's marked even. Put that back on. And this should drop on fairly easy. So all these wires are already shipped to the exact same drill. That's the old lens as well. Use a nice fresh clean one. That drops on there. Hopefully that'll be her. Look at that. Actually sounds better than my own. This one sounds a lot smoother. Suppose it should do. It looks an awful lot newer. That's her. Second hand part will have to do. New one, which costs about €80 just for me to buy in, plus labour and VAT. Second hand one, it's only costing what, €30 or €40 altogether. It's a lot cheaper. It'll keep the customer nice and happy. Plus, you'd hardly even notice that it's a second hand part. That's her. What is with all the Makitas today? Another one. Makita Grinder this time. DGA504. Right. So much point in putting the battery in. It ain't turning anyway. And I would say it's been lying up a long time. That contact's not been used in an awful long time. See if it even switches on. No, not too bad. It starts. Like always, brushless motor. If it doesn't do anything, it's not good. You'd want it making a bad noise more than no noise. At least it's making a bad noise like that. The controller's actually working and it can actually be fixed up. So this was been opened before. So that's normally this side. So See, it's a stand now. Gone. Burnt out. That stator's burnt out. Coil gone on it. So either way, this ain't going to be worth fixing. Same crack. Actual stator's come loose. You can see it moving there. So that has worked its way loose. Comes slack. And the magnet on the rotor has pulled it down and it's been rubbing on the rotor. It's rubbing just here, as you can see. And that heats up this segment, heats up this copper, which work hardens it. This then takes more resistance to actually run. So whenever this is running, these will be cool and this will keep getting hotter and hotter until eventually burns it all up and shorts it out. So that ain't going to be fixed. At €150 for that controller, it's just not going to be worth fixing. So we're going to give that one a miss. That I would safely say has been lying up in a shed somewhere for quite some time. Put it back together so I can go back in the shed. So that's not worth fixing. Right, next up again is a wee Makita drill. And I mean wee. This is the DHP487. It's like a wee cabinet maker's drill or kitchen fitters. Brushless motor, mind you. It looks like a wee 10.8, but it is an 18-volt drill. Ooh. What's going on there? What is that? Sounds like something's rubbing. Yeah. Something's going on inside. Don't think it's a trigger. Man was saying it is just starting and stopping sometimes. Sometimes she won't drive forward, and if you change into reverse, it will go in reverse and that fixes it to go forward again. You sort of mess around with the forward and reverse switch, it sorts itself out. But it sounded like the way he was saying it was a switch, but that's actually sounding more like a motor problem. Sounds like something's actually binding up or something. Oh, cool, look at that. Totally different design. It's like a half rear cover. It is actually a half rear cover. Look at that. Never seen that before. I've just done that, tell them I hit the screws in the back. Not sure it's a very good design, mind you, because that could be the problem. Nope. Size of the wee armature. It's teeny. Right, what's going on here? Oh, a tiny little motor. She nearly sounds like she's fighting with herself. Maybe it is a switch. I was assuming it was going to be something rubbing on here. Not a bad bearing. Maybe it's on the gearbox actually. Runs fine that way. Turn the other way. Something not right in there. I think it is a gearbox problem. That's held in by a pin. Teeth look okay. Yeah, it's in deeper. Something on here. But what? Is it just the lock pins? It actually is. That's what it is. It's just gummed up. They're just off the clutch mechanism. Actual chocks turn it fine. So these are the problem. And it might simply be dirt or the grease. I think they might be just gummed up. The grease is going all hard. So there's something in there, yeah. It's actually getting stuck on the grease. So this might get away with a wee clean. A wee bit of lighter grease maybe. That might cure this problem. Try that. See if it fixes it. Right, that's everything clean. Let's see if we can get it rebuilt. Gear grease, I'm going to be using this. Nothing too heavy. But you also don't want to be using anything too light. It could just leak out again. You don't want it leaking back into the back of the motor. Not that it would do any harm, but it makes a hell of a mess. Now the balls going here, that's for the clutch. As you tighten your clutch, it's a plate that rises up, pushes these balls tighter against this clutch gear. So the tighter they are, the less likely it is to slip. Drop them all on first. Grease helps to hold them. The main problem is these little rollers here, these little pins. What these actually do, they're the actual lock for your chuck. So if you're going to use your drill or tighten the chuck or loosen it off, you don't want the gearbox just spinning with the chuck as you go to tighten it. So these here, whenever you turn the chuck by hand, these bind up and lock the spindle. But when the motor turns the spindle, they go free. So they're like a one-way job. They just allow the spindle to turn on one side, not the other. So if you turn the chuck, they lock up. But if you turn this boy, which will be connected onto your motor through the gearbox, this allows the spindle to actually turn without interfering with them. That's all they're doing. If you wanted, you could remove them, but then every time you try to slacken off your chuck or actually tighten it up, the gearbox is just going to spin along with it. Get that on. Another dab of grease. These things take like a pea-sized amount of grease sometimes, very, very little. I'm not sure which gears goes with which set, but it doesn't really matter because they're all different sizes. So they're only going to fit in one way. If one set don't work, try a different set, maybe they will. So we can test this as well. This one. Let's see if it actually turns now. Much better. So it must have been that lock ring first. That's for locking your second speed. So whenever you go into high speed, this gear meshes against this metal ring to stop this gear rotating. That's what gives you your high speed. So you'll have no chance of stripping this out on high speed. You'll wreck the gearbox before you strip them metal teeth. No, wrong way round. One's different. I guess because that one's different. That's to do with the selector. Drop that in. This one's different as well. So I guess that goes up there. That's that bit. Maybe the handiest way to put this together now. Two other sets of gears, so the bigger ones are going to be getting into the bigger gear at the bottom. Probably just be handier to take this apart. We want the gears on these, and then big gears have to go in there, onto that. So it should be very hard to get them all lined up. The best thing to do is just take this apart. These are sided as well. Not that it's going to matter actually. It'll only go on one way again. Probably easier to do it this way. Yeah. There's no reason why I can't do that either. Actually, that won't even work either. Because these also have to go on. They locate onto this body. So I have to have the selector on and the gear to fit these before I close this. So that makes it a wee bit more difficult. Just have to go on like that. So now I need to get to that gear. That's the selector. It slides on to this track. So that pin has to go on there. Preferably without breaking that plastic housing. That's it. With that in place, click these black in again. You should press in. Again, levers to the top. Just over to this side to slide on. These gears to rotate to help guide them in. That's it. Twist it around to lock it. That's it. So that's high speed and that's low speed. That's her. Ready to go. On first because it's pressed on. Bearing sits in there. The selector itself, normally you just get a black ring in these, but this one has a second piece. It's a second spring that attaches onto the selector lever. This makes it a little more awkward to fit. Not that much. So first goes forward, then this drops on here. This little plastic piece sticking up goes in between these two springs. Now the purpose of that, on these brushless machines, whenever you change the gear, sometimes it doesn't actually lock in properly, and the thing can run that fast. When if you start running, it can actually slip on the gears because they haven't actually fully engaged. This just gives an extra bit of spring onto the lever, so as you change position, you go forward. It doesn't fully engage, as in you change speed, and it only goes halfway because obviously the meshing gears haven't lined up perfectly to go together. Maybe they've just lined up slightly and are hitting off each other. If you do that, this will actually be under tension. The lever will be in position, but this will be sitting on the tension of the spring, still pushing it forward. So whenever you turn on the motor, that'll then lock in whenever it initially starts moving. It stops the gearbox from grinding the gears if they haven't engaged correctly. It's a nice wee feature to have, but very awkward to fit. So the gear selector actually goes up onto the top. And the bar hooks on to this opening. So that sits there. Now, drop on the motor, line everything up. Drop it on. That should be it. Love it when the body just slides together nice and easy. Now, see if that cures the problem. Look at that. Nice one. That's how you fix Makita DGA504 with a jammed up gearbox. Now that is the first time I've had to do one like that. Never seen it before in any drill, not just the Makita. But if you ever see your drill doing that, making that sort of straining sound, it's one thing to check. That's her up and running anyway. Keep us man happy.